You think you know yourself. But Carl Jung would tell you, you're living a lie. Right now, as you listen to these words, there's another version of you lurking in the darkness of your psyche. A version you've spent your entire life running from, denying and pushing into the deepest corners of your unconscious mind. Jung called this your shadow self. And here's the terrifying truth he discovered. This hidden part of you isn't just sitting quietly in the background. It's pulling the strings of your life in ways you can't even imagine. Every inexplicable outburst of anger, every self-sabotaging decision, every moment you've acted completely out of character and wondered where that came from. That wasn't some random malfunction of your personality. That was your shadow self breaking through the carefully constructed facade you call your identity. Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and what he found would shake the foundations of how we understand ourselves. He discovered that we don't just have one unified self. Instead, we're a collection of different aspects, and the parts we reject, deny, and refuse to acknowledge don't simply disappear. They gather in the shadows, growing stronger, more complex, and more influential with each passing day. Think about the last time you did something that surprised even you. Maybe you snapped at someone you love over something trivial. Maybe you found yourself attracted to someone completely wrong for you. Maybe you made a decision that seemed to go against everything you claimed to value. In that moment, you probably thought to yourself, "That's not like me." But Jung would tell you something different. That was exactly like you. It was just a part of you that you've been refusing to meet. Your shadow isn't evil, despite what you might think. It's not some demonic force trying to destroy your life. Your shadow is simply everything you decided you couldn't be in order to survive in the world. When you were a child, you quickly learned what behaviors got you: love, acceptance, and safety, and what behaviors got you rejection, punishment, or abandonment. So you developed what Jung called a persona, a mask you wear to navigate the world successfully. But here's where it gets fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Every time you chose to be the good child instead of expressing your anger, that anger didn't vanish. Every time you decided to be agreeable instead of speaking your truth, that authentic voice didn't disappear. Every time you suppressed your wildness, your sexuality, your creativity, or your aggression to fit in, those aspects of yourself went into what Jung called the personal unconscious, forming your shadow. And your shadow has been growing ever since. It's been collecting every rejected thought, every suppressed emotion, every denied impulse. It's been watching from the darkness as you live what you think is your authentic life, and it's been waiting for its moment to emerge. The most unsettling part? Your shadow is often more authentic than the person you think you are. While your conscious personality is largely a construction designed to help you function in society, your shadow contains raw, unfiltered aspects of your true nature. It holds your genuine emotions, your real desires, your authentic responses to life. The very things you've been trained to hide might be the most honest parts of who you are. Jung discovered this through his own terrifying encounter with his shadow during what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. After his break with Freud, Jung descended into a period of psychological crisis where he began experiencing visions, hearing voices, and encountering figures from his unconscious mind. Instead of dismissing these experiences as pathological, he had the courage to engage with them, to dialogue with these shadow figures, and to integrate their messages into his conscious awareness. What he found was that these shadow aspects weren't trying to destroy him. They were trying to complete him. They carried information, energy, and wisdom that his conscious mind desperately needed. But because he had been rejecting them for so long, they had to speak in the dramatic language of symptoms, dreams, and psychological disturbance to get his attention. This is happening in your life right now. Your shadow is constantly trying to communicate with you, to bring balance to your one-sided conscious attitude, to introduce you to the parts of yourself you've forgotten or never allowed yourself to explore. But because you're not listening, because you're too busy maintaining your persona and living up to your self-image, your shadow has to find other ways to express itself. It expresses itself through projection. Every person you can't stand, every public figure who triggers intense disgust or hatred in you, every type of person you judge harshly carries a piece of your shadow. Jung said that we don't see people as they are. We see them through the lens of our own unconscious content. When someone evokes a powerful negative reaction in you, they're often displaying qualities that exist in your own shadow that you refuse to acknowledge. Think about someone you absolutely cannot tolerate. What specifically bothers you about them? Their arrogance, their neediness, their dishonesty, their lack of discipline. Jung would suggest that you look more carefully at these qualities because they likely exist in your own unconscious in some form. The intensity of your reaction is proportional to how much you've repressed these same tendencies in yourself. Your shadow also expresses itself through what Jung called autonomous complexes. These are parts of your psyche that seem to have a life of their own, that can suddenly take over your behavior and make you act in ways that seem foreign to your conscious intentions. You might find yourself saying things you don't mean, making decisions that go against your values, or falling into patterns that you swore you'd never repeat. These aren't signs of weakness or lack of willpower. They're signs that your shadow has gathered enough energy to briefly override your conscious control. And the longer you ignore your shadow, the more powerful these autonomous eruptions become. But perhaps most significantly, your shadow expresses itself through what appears to be self-sabotage. Every time you're on the verge of success and mysteriously find ways to undermine yourself. Every time you're in a good relationship and suddenly start picking fights or creating drama. Every time you're making progress toward a goal and inexplicably lose motivation or create obstacles. You might think this is just bad luck or character flaws, but Jung would tell you something different. Your shadow often sabotages what your conscious mind wants because it knows something your conscious mind doesn't. Maybe your definition of success is based on other people's values rather than your own authentic desires. Maybe you're pursuing relationships or goals that would require you to betray even more of your true nature. Your shadow's sabotage might actually be protection, forcing you to stop and reconsider whether you're moving in a direction that honors your wholeness or just feeds your persona. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives in this unconscious battle with their shadow. They experience its effects, they suffer from its interventions, but they never understand what's happening. They never realize that the very parts of themselves they're trying to eliminate are actually essential aspects of their complete personality. Jung called this process of acknowledging and integrating your shadow individuation. It's the journey from being an unconscious collection of inherited patterns, social conditioning, and repressed content toward becoming a conscious, integrated individual who can access the full spectrum of their psychological resources. But individuation isn't a comfortable process. It requires you to face aspects of yourself that you've spent years, maybe decades, trying to avoid. It means acknowledging that you contain capacities for behavior, thoughts, and feelings that contradict your self-image. It means accepting that you are far more complex, contradictory, and mysterious than you ever imagined. The first step in this process is simply recognizing that you have a shadow. Most people live with the unconscious assumption that they know themselves, that their self-image is accurate and complete. But Jung would tell you that your self-image is just the tip of the iceberg. The vast majority of who you are remains hidden in the unconscious, and much of that hidden content is in your shadow. Start paying attention to your emotional reactions, especially the intense ones. When you find yourself having a strong response to someone or something, ask yourself what this might be telling you about your own unconscious content. When you catch yourself judging others harshly, explore whether you might be seeing your own rejected qualities reflected back to you. Notice your patterns of self-sabotage. Instead of just getting frustrated with yourself for undermining your own progress, get curious about what your shadow might be trying to tell you. What would happen if you actually achieved what you think you want? What parts of yourself would you have to deny or sacrifice? What authentic desires might you be ignoring in pursuit of socially approved goals? Pay attention to your dreams. Jung believed that dreams were one of the primary ways the unconscious communicates with consciousness, and shadow figures often appear in dreams as people of the same sex as the dreamer who represent rejected or undeveloped aspects of the personality. These dream figures might be criminals, outcasts, or simply people displaying qualities you would never allow yourself to express. But recognition is just the beginning. The real work of shadow integration involves developing a relationship with these rejected aspects of yourself. This doesn't mean acting out every impulse or abandoning all social boundaries. It means finding conscious, constructive ways to honor the legitimate needs and energies that your shadow represents. If your shadow contains suppressed anger, you might need to learn how to set boundaries and advocate for yourself. If it contains rejected creativity, you might need to find ways to express your artistic impulses, even if they don't fit your professional image. If it contains denied sexuality or wildness, you might need to explore these aspects of yourself in appropriate contexts, rather than having them emerge unconsciously in destructive ways. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow, which is impossible, but to develop a conscious relationship with it. When you can acknowledge these aspects of yourself without being overwhelmed by them, they transform from autonomous complexes that control your behavior into resources you can access consciously. Jung discovered that people who successfully integrate their shadow often become more authentic, more creative, and paradoxically more moral than before. When you're no longer using tremendous psychological energy to repress parts of yourself, that energy becomes available for conscious living. When you're no longer projecting your shadow onto others, you can see people more clearly and relate to them more genuinely. When you're no longer being sabotaged by unconscious forces, you can pursue goals that truly align with your complete personality. But perhaps most importantly, shadow integration leads to what Jung called wholeness. Instead of being a fragmented person who is constantly at war with parts of yourself, you become someone who can access the full range of human experience while maintaining conscious choice about how to express these different aspects. This doesn't mean you become perfect or that life becomes easy. It means you become real. You develop the capacity to be fully human with all the complexity, contradiction, and richness that this entails. You stop trying to be a one-dimensional character and start embracing the multifaceted being you actually are. The shadow will always be with you. New experiences, changing life circumstances, and evolving consciousness will continually create new shadow content as you continue to make choices about what to express and what to suppress. But once you understand this process, once you develop the skill of recognizing and integrating shadow material, it becomes an ongoing dialogue rather than an unconscious battle. Jung believed that this work wasn't just personally important, but collectively crucial. He argued that much of the evil in the world comes from people who are completely unconscious of their own shadow content. When individuals project their shadows onto entire groups of people, you get racism, nationalism, and genocide. When leaders are unconscious of their shadow, you get the abuse of power on a massive scale. But when individuals do the difficult work of facing their own darkness, they become less likely to project it onto others. They become more capable of recognizing evil without being possessed by it. They become more genuinely compassionate because they understand their own capacity for both light and darkness. Your shadow self has been controlling your life not because it's malevolent, but because it's been ignored. The rejected, denied, and suppressed aspects of your personality don't lose their power when you push them into the unconscious. They gather energy, develop autonomous existence, and find ways to express themselves whether you're conscious of it or not. The question isn't whether you have a shadow. The question is whether you're going to continue letting it operate unconsciously, pulling the strings of your life from the darkness, or whether you're going to have the courage to turn toward it, to acknowledge it, and to begin the fascinating, terrifying, and ultimately liberating work of becoming whole. Jung once said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your shadow isn't the enemy of your growth. It's the guardian of your completeness, waiting in the darkness with the very qualities and energies you need to become fully yourself. The choice is yours. You can continue living the partial life of the persona, forever at war with parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. Or you can begin the journey toward individuation, toward wholeness, toward the full expression of who you really are. Your shadow self has been waiting your entire life for you to finally turn around and say hello. What would happen if you finally had the courage to meet yourself completely?